Hey everyone, this is for all of my bravest kind listeners. My name is Ryan Schaefer, and I am a firefighter as well as the creator and host of a podcast that I started in early 2021 called The Bravest Kind. The purpose of my podcast is to share stories of brave and vulnerable individuals, as it is my sincere belief that by doing so, it gives us all the ability to unlock bravery within ourselves. I've been writing a lot lately, and I have also done a handful of speaking engagements. So I've really been reflecting a lot on the pandemic that has been ongoing for almost 2 years now. I've also spoken to a handful of journalists throughout the course of this pandemic. And while it is always my own words and thoughts and truths that are used in these interviews, they get edited. So while I've spoken publicly about the effects that this pandemic has had, really on first responders specifically, I've yet to do so on my own platform unedited. And I wanted to take the opportunity to do just that. The word brave gets used a lot when describing firefighters and first responders in general. But I think if you were to talk to any first responder, almost to a person, none of us really consider ourselves to be any more brave, any more courageous than anybody else. When we go on a call, we are simply doing our job. And we are trained for any number of scenarios. We know exactly what to do when we run into a burning building. We know what to do when we respond to a major vehicle accident on the side of the freeway. We know what to do when we need to rescue somebody from the water or dangling from the side of a building. What we did not know what to do, especially in the early stages, was respond to a pandemic. There simply was no blueprint for us to follow. So I want to share a story, a personal story, and I'm going to go back to the beginning of this pandemic. Specifically, the date was March 4th, 2020. I reported for duty that day. I was on shift March 4th and March 5th. We worked 48-hour shifts where I work at the Kirkland Fire Department. Now, on February 29th, there was a report of a death due to COVID from an assisted living center in Kirkland, Washington. This was the Life Care Center of Kirkland, which really happened to be the outbreak or the epicenter of the outbreak in the United States. Now, between that first death being reported and me reporting to duty on March 4th, multiple deaths had occurred, multiple hospitalizations. So it was apparent by this time that we had a major outbreak on our hands. At some point during the day on March 4th, we were told that the CDC was going to be arriving. We were told that an emergency hazmat team was going to be showing up and that we would no longer be responding to the Life Care Center. And in fact, the residents would be removed from that facility and placed in other facilities. I can assure you that this did not happen, because at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, so we're now in the early morning hours of March 5th, the tones go off and we were dispatched to someone in cardiac arrest at the Life Care Center of Kirkland, and they were known to be COVID positive. The thing about being a first responder is we don't have the choice to choose whether or not we go on a call. It's not as though we can accept the mission or deny the mission. It's what we all signed up to do. When the tones go, it's time for us to get to work. Now, again, this was not like any other call. Because Kirkland was the epicenter of this outbreak, there was all kinds of national media camped out in the parking lot of the Life Care Center. When we showed up to the front door at this facility for the particular call I'm talking about, there was nobody there to let us in. The reason being, there were only 3 staff members working at this point in time, servicing all the residents. That's because the rest were either sick themselves or they were too scared to come into work. Finally, somebody did open the door for us. And as we were walking to the room where the patient lived, I just remember it was super eerie. It was very dark, very quiet. We finally did make access to the room. There was a single light fixture hanging from the ceiling. And I remember that the light bulb itself was very dim and yellowish. In my mind, my recollection is almost as though the light was gently swaying as well. It probably wasn't, but that's my recollection. It almost felt as though we were on the set of some scary film. There was one staff member doing CPR by herself on the patient. Now, CPR calls are fairly common, and we're very good at them. King County has one of the highest save rates, if not the highest save rate in the country for high performance CPR. So everybody knows what to do. And it was no different with this particular call. We were all professional. We knew the job at hand. Everybody knew their role. And we worked this patient the way we would any other cardiac arrest patient. Unfortunately, this particular individual did not make it. But the interesting thing about this job is sometimes when you're in high pressure, high risk situations, you don't often recognize the danger until after the fact. You're so in the moment and in the flow of the task at hand that sometimes it's not until you remove yourself when the call is over that you think back to some of the risk factors. And this was no different. I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't a little fearful after this call, because again, this was at the very beginning and we did not know exactly how this virus was spread. We didn't know how easily it was spread. We didn't know if the PPE that we were wearing was going to actually protect us. We didn't know if we contracted this virus, if we would potentially pass it along to our family members and loved ones when we returned home. I also want to take a moment to say how proud I was of the men and women that I work side by side with at the Kirkham Fire Department, the medics from the Redmond Fire Department, and not just there, really all firefighters, police officers, first responders, all across the country for really stepping up not only in the beginning days of the pandemic, but for continuing to step up every day forward to this very day right here. Now, let's fast forward to where we are now. We are all impacted by this pandemic. Everybody has been affected. Some of you have even lost loved ones. Children missed out on an entire school year of in-person learning. People have lost businesses. Our entire way of life has been uprooted. So again, we have all felt the impacts in some way, shape, or form. So we need to figure out as a society a better way to support and to empower one another. Millions of people around the planet have faced trauma, and worse, don't feel comfortable or like they can talk about it. So we have to share stories. Okay? People do not heal alone. They heal in caring communities. So we can create opportunities to be vulnerable and share our struggles, especially those of us first responders that face so much compounding trauma on a daily basis. This is the mission of the Bravest Kind podcast, and I hope that you'll join me for the ride. Thank you.